And good afternoon and welcome. Welcome to the King Island Scheelite presentation. This is going to be a great one because we are heading down to Tasmania and the ASX code is KIS. And as Johan just said to me, keep it simple. This is a great project. Here to tell us the story, please welcome Executive Chairman Johan Jacobs. Thank you, Johan. Great to see you.
Thank you very much, Kerry. Glad to be with you, albeit that it's rather strange not seeing the audience, but that's the, I guess, the order of the new day.
Oh, but you can see me. That's as good.
Absolutely. My presentation is going to take approximately 15 to 20 minutes, and then we'll be open for questions after that. Welcome, everybody. And the presentation will take the form. I'll introduce the project very briefly on the slide that's up on the screen. Secondly, we'll talk about why tungsten is regarded as a critical mineral. Then we'll run through the project itself, and then finally end off with what are the major uses currently of tungsten and where we see the tungsten market going. So without any further ado, what you see there on your screens is what you will see on King Island as of today. In the foreground is the pit that was dug back in the 1970s and 80s. They mined the Dolphin Project from about 1917 through to 1990, when the mine closed due to very, very low prices. It certainly didn't run out of reserves. When Chris and I got involved initially in about 2012, 2013, that pit was full of water up to about that level there, which was about 2 meters from the ground level. We spent some 3 months dewatering the pit at the rate of 400 odd liters per second over a 3-month period, and cost us $1 million in diesel fuel and rental of the pump. That was a floating pump. Today, what we have is a permanent installation at the bottom of the sump, and after a rain event, we pump water from here along there into the Bass Strait. It is pure rainwater. There are no contaminants in the water. We tested the water originally as required by EPA, and there were absolutely no contaminants in there. Of note also the harbour, the King Island Commercial Harbour at Grassy. The breakwater there was actually built from overburden that came out of the original pit, as was this area along the coastline as well. That's all reclaimed land from overburden that came out of the pit. And that's worthy of note, as you'll see later on, the development plan seeks to do a further reclamation of land into the Bass Strait. The processing plant that we propose building will be in this locality here. That's about 700 meters from the port, and the port can accommodate 5,000-ton vessels. Tungsten, it's a strategic industrial metal. This diagram illustrates along the horizontal axis the economic importance of various minerals. Tungsten is way off to the right there, and the vertical axis depicts what the European Commission regards as supply regards as elements or minerals that are in a supply risk situation, and tungsten is there as well. It's very important because of the supply risk. China dominates the market. They produce and consume about 83% of tungsten worldwide, their mines produce, and obviously they consume to manufacture tools, etc. Tungsten is the hardest, second only to diamonds in terms of minerals, and it has the highest melting point of any metallic elements. It's used and traditionally been used in the aeronautical, automotive, and semiconductor industries, but it's now turning more and more to the high-tech industry in terms of 3D printing, etc. Also, with regard to elements or minerals that are most likely to run out, it is certainly regarded as the highest mineral that is the most likely to run out of production worldwide. The industry itself in 2017 was a $3.5 billion industry and had compound annual growth of 8.6. Today, that is significantly lower because of COVID. By and large, the US and European end users are looking to reduce their reliance and dependence on Chinese production. In September this year, US President Donald Trump declared an executive order regarding the supply of critical minerals. He felt that the reliance on China for multiple critical minerals certainly put the US in a disadvantage, and then created a multi-departmental investigation into how to combat that. It's interesting to note that today there are no tungsten mines in North America at all. The last one that operated there was in Canada, and that closed about 3 or 4 years ago. Moving on to the Dolphin Project itself, where is King Island? It's more commonly famous for its cheese and beef, and obviously lobster. But it's halfway between Victoria and Tasmania, and it's the largest island on the western side of the Bass, or in the Bass Strait, but on the western side of Tasmania. The port of Grassy, as we saw earlier, is about 1 kilometre from the mine, and that accommodates 5,000-ton vessels on a roll-on, roll-off basis, and there's a weekly service to the island. The Dolphin Project has had all its approvals granted. That's the mining license, environmental protection license. We have further exploration licenses in and around the existing Dolphin mine that we've started exploring with some very interesting results. But our major focus at this stage is the recommencement and redevelopment of the Dolphin mine. It's relatively low cost by comparison to our peers, both in terms of OPEX and CAPEX. It's certainly in a very stable jurisdiction, and it's, as you'll see later, it's the certainly, as far as we know, the highest grade tungsten deposit in the world. We also have substantial upside. I'll cover that a bit later, but we are looking at and have gone a long way to completing an underground mining study, and that should be published together with a revised feasibility study within the next 3 to 4 weeks. In terms of infrastructure, it's ideally situated for water, port, and power. We have a number of options utilizing either diesel generators or tapping into the island's infrastructure. In terms of offtake, we have about 70% of our production committed to 3 or 4 year contracts, one with Wolfram, Bergbau and Hutten, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Sandvik, and the other one to Kalon Resources, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Noble Group. In terms of world-class quality deposit, along the vertical axis there, you'll see WO3 grade. Our resource is around 0.9%. The open cut reserve is 0.73%. In terms of the size of the circles here, or the dots, depict the size of the resource. However, once you convert that through your grade, what it tells us here is that in terms of contained tungsten or contained WO3, we are the third largest resource in the world. We have hemadin out on the right-hand side, very low grade, well below 0.2%, and they the owners of the hemadin project was Wolf, an ASX listed company that went into receivership some 2-3 years ago. They are currently trying to re-establish that mine. In terms of the open cut reserves, we've got 3 million tons at 0.73%. That will be mined at the rate of about 400,000 tons per year. So it gives us an open cut mine life of about 8 years. In terms of total resource, we have 9.6 million tons at 0.9%. So just the arithmetic indicates that the underground resources are significantly higher in grade than the open cut. We've gone further than this 2015 desktop study. We are well advanced, as I said earlier, in terms of completing the underground study, and current indications are that we'll probably extend the life of the mine by some 5 or 6 years. Historically, the mine produced 10 million tons at 0.67%, and indicative of the grade, the deeper we go, the richer the ore body becomes. This is, sorry, just go back. The top photograph here shows the mine before we started dewatering, and the bottom photograph shows the mine or the pit as it is today. The development plan is that, sorry, let me just move, is for the mine, that's the outline of the current pit up there, and we plan to go deeper and do a cut back to the east. Currently, the mine, the pit is about -65 meters RL, and we plan to go to about -140. The development plan down here sees us going deeper and doing the cutback there. The overburden from that will be deposited into the Bass Strait as reclaimed land, as was done previously without any issue. And we have fully permitted that with the EPA. The advantage of redeveloping this mine is that we're virtually in ore from day one, rather than having to excavate significant overburden to get to the ore body. Based on the 2019 feasibility study, the project, which was then an 8-year open cut life, yielded a return of 146 million in terms of NPV. That's at 8% pre-tax, and an internal rate of return of some 47%. Payback, which I think is critical and very in terms of resource projects, is that it's a 2.75 year payback. Capital was around, and that's pure capital, around 65 million. We expect that number to increase slightly, but that doesn't include any contract mining or leasing of equipment. That is total CapEx expenditure to get the mine redeveloped. The feasibility study was based on a 70-cent $1 US exchange rate, and on average a APT price of some 300 US per metric ton unit. A metric ton unit is 10 kilograms. The offtake that we have with Wolfram Bergbau was signed beginning of last year. Sandvik is a high-tech engineering group out of Scandinavia, has a market cap of some 18 billion. Its subsidiary Wolfram is one of the few fully integrated tungsten and APT produces. It has its own mine in Austria. It mines concentrated about 30% WO3, whereas we'll be supplying them at about 63 to 65% WO3. The contract is for 35,000 metric ton units, or 3,500 tons of WO3 per year for 4 years. The offtake that we have with Kalon Resources, or the Noble Group, is for some 98,000 MTUs, or 9,800 tons of WO3 for 3 years. And that's about 50% of our proposed production. Both of those contracts have their pricing based off APT spot price. However, there are mechanisms of price protection on the downside. We have commenced sometime very early on this year discussions with the federal government. Late last year, the federal government established a critical minerals facilitation office in Canberra, and they were set up to, with a mandate to potentially assist in the funding of high priority projects. The CMFO identified tungsten as a critical mineral, and out of the 24 critical minerals that they identified, tungsten is certainly in the top 10. We are in discussions and have been in discussions with them, as well as other state and federal agencies, to see how we can assist and they can assist in the redevelopment of the Dolphin mine, given the strategic and regional importance of both the mineral as well as the mine for the Tasmanian government. From a corporate overview point of view, we've got 304 million shares on issue after the latest capital raising that we did some 2 weeks ago. We have cash balance of 2.1 million. We have debt owing to our 2 major shareholders of 5.2 million. Both those loans will be dealt with through the financing of the company for the redevelopment of the mine. They will more than likely be converted into equity. All that up gives us a market cap of at 11.5 cents per share of some 35 million dollars. We also have some outstanding listed options, which are currently trading at about 2.5 cents. It's a very tightly held register. We have some 68% of the register accounted for by 20 shareholders. Chris Ellis, my executive co-director, is the major shareholder. Then Rick Chadwick is number 2, and the various other shareholders are listed there on your screens. Just of note, the shareholders, Chris Ellis, Chadwick, Haggerty, Plummer, and Davies, were all founders and founding shareholders and directors of XL Coal before that listed, and then got taken over by Peabody some 10, 12, 14 years ago. The 3 directors on the board, very small board, is myself, Chris, and Greg Hancock out of Perth. He's had extensive experience in the equity markets and brings a lot of insight into that market to the board. Talking a bit about the tungsten market itself, it's a very small market. It's only 106,000 tons per year. That was in 2019. That had a decline of some 0.7% year on year. The major uses of tungsten is still in the transport industry, where some 31% of the product is used. It's not so much in vehicles and aircraft, but rather in the cutting tools for the manufacture of those transport modes. The second largest consumer is mining and construction. Obviously, your ground engaging tools with the open cut mines, your large boring machines with the drill bits, tungsten carbide, drill bits, etc., consumes a significant amount of tungsten. Industrial use is declining, but then energy is increasing because of wind power, and so is defense. Defense a couple of years ago only constituted about 5% of total consumption, whereas today it's around 7%. It's also of note that the recycling of tungsten, of that 106,000 tons per year, some 33% of that is actually from recycling materials. That's not unheard of, because a lot of that recycling is from offcuts when they manufacture or cut the blocks for the cutting tools. So it's very clean offcuts. They don't need significant reprocessing or cleaning to get it back to pure W or pure tungsten. Passenger cars still is the biggest consumer of that transport sector. And if we look at the current and the future, the forecast end use for 2020 is forecast to decline by about 16,000 tons, 19 to 20, because of the COVID issues and the decline in the manufacture of vehicles and aircraft. The automotive and oil and gas industry obviously have been the highest affected. They're down some 26%. Growth rates through to 2028, we're looking at around compound annual growth of 1.8%. That converts into an increase of about 9,600 tons over that 10-year period. In terms of geographic areas, China has been the least affected by COVID. It's down about 7%, whereas Europe and the US is down some 23%. In terms of the price history of tungsten, that indicates both in US and $8 terms. Back in the 18 period, we had significant growth there.
Johan, sorry to interrupt you. You've just got 2 minutes left, and just want to let you know.
Thank you. We are seeing an uptick in the price again as we moving forward, and the long-term price is still forecast at about $280 US per metric ton unit. Thank you very much. About a minute and a half left for questioning. But more than happy to take questions by email as well, or by phone, and I'll respond accordingly.
Thanks, Johan. Very, very interesting. My challenge, and extraordinary what you've done with, dewatering, etc. Not a lot of cash sitting in there at the moment. What are your next plans? What can investors hope to hear from you going forward in the next few months?
Well, certainly, as I mentioned earlier, within the next 3 to 4 weeks, we hope to publish the revised feasibility study, which will incorporate the underground mine. It will incorporate a revised metallurgical flow sheet. We hope that with our discussions with governments, both federal and state, that there's something that might come out of that. And then early in the new year, we hope to, we've mandated a group to look for debt financing for us. And then hopefully towards the end of the first quarter next year, we'll be in a position to look at fully funding the project.
Certainly an interesting time for critical metals. We really appreciate you sharing with us the King Island Scheelite story today. Thanks, Johan.
Thanks very much, Kerry, and thanks everybody for attending.